Welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. 30 days to recover from burnout and reclaim your vitality. With your hosts, Morgan B. and Lucy Ann Chard.
Hi, and welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. I'm Morgan B., and I'm here with my co-host, Lucy Ann Chard. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, everybody.
We're very honored to introduce today's guest, Spiwe Jefferson. Spiwe is a highly accomplished attorney recognized as one of the top 100 civil defense litigators in the state of Minnesota and the top 100 national Black lawyers. A student of mindful meditation for more than 14 years, she is author of the weekly email Mindful in 5 and an upcoming book providing step-by-step guidance and a year's worth of mindful reflections to help you live and work to your highest and best potential each day. Hi, Spiwe. Welcome to the Replenishing Life Project.
Hi, Morgan. Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much for having me today.
Awesome. So thank you and welcome. And so tell us a bit more about yourself and the work that you are doing in the world.
Well, as Morgan mentioned, I am a lawyer. I have been practicing law for well over 20 years now. And, you know, I got to a point in my career where I found that I am surrounded by, powerful people. I have sort of these powerhouse professionals, devoted parents, successful executives, people sort of living out the lives that they intended. And you would think that they have it all, right? Except what's been happening is in quiet moments, I'm having intimate conversations where I'm hearing questions like, well, gosh, why do I still feel like I'm not good enough? And I thought achieving this thing or having this child or getting married would make me feel like I was fulfilled, and I don't feel that way. And is this really all there is, right? And so add to that the daily stress of just balancing work and life and family and children and worrying about the state of the world in general. So it just seemed like there's a lot more stress in the world today. We are surrounded by technology, and yet we are lonelier than ever. And with every complaint, I was thinking, well, I have a suggestion for that. And so I started this body of work that essentially provides a way of centering yourself and setting your intentions for your day and your life in 5-minute increments, because most people don't have a lot of time anyway. And so that was where Mindful in 5 came from, and as well as the book, which is a compilation of a year's worth of mindful reflections and step-by-step guidance for how do you actually even do it. And so the goal of all of it really is to give you a way of going within yourself to find that peace, that joy, and that stability, so that you're not carried away and sort of flung asunder with the day-to-day rise and fall of emotion and everything else.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds absolutely incredible. How inspiring. So, Spiwe, tell us a little bit about your personal story. What happened to you with regards to your journey through burnout and how you came to this amazing body of work that you're creating in your own life?
Well, some counselors say that death, divorce, and job transfer are the most stressful things that a human being can encounter. So back in 2008, I'm married now, but back in 2008, my divorce became final from my first husband. And that was in January of 2008. And in April of 2008, my father passed away. And I am actually I was born in Zimbabwe. I live in the United States now. I lived briefly in the United Kingdom. and I have lived in 4 different states. So over the course of my life and my career, I have experienced those 3 things that counselors say are the worst things that you can encounter. And I have been a student of meditation for about 14 years now, and would not have weathered any of those things as well were it not for the fact that I really had to hold on to that practice. Just on some days it felt like just to stay sane. And so really a lot of what I experienced over time is in the body of the emails and the book that's coming out, because much of it is stuff, as I've learned, that many, many people experience in different ways, right? So if you've ever, anyone who's lived long enough to be in a serious romantic relationship probably knows something about heartache and heartburn and feeling betrayed and all of that horrible stuff. And how do you get up in the morning and go to work and keep a smile on your face and carry on when you feel like your entire world is falling apart? And some people have done it. I had a boss who went through a really difficult breakup with his partner, and it looked a lot to me like going through a really bad, divorce. And that was a business relationship, but still, how do you carry on and how do you pick up the pieces? And that is what really brought me to write what I write, to try and share some of that to help other people who might be going through difficult days.
Wow, that's so beautiful and such a gift to the world, for people to be able to use this as a tool for their well-being. Like that's so beautiful. And so, as we know, as most people can see, like being a lawyer is very intense, and it's long hours. And so how did you come up with this, the Mindful in 5, as something for busy professionals to fit into their lives? Like what was the thought process behind that?
Well, I have a group of women that I get together with on a regular basis. We call it our sister circle. And these are, there are about 11 of us. And these are women who are sort of at the top of their game in terms of the legal profession. And one of the things that we do is we check in with each other. How are you doing and how are things going? And there was this one particular day when, I was expecting that I was going to hear, "Oh, this is amazing. I'm living my best life. I have arrived." You know what I mean? And what I heard instead was, "Gosh, I'm exhausted. And I'm tired, and I fly here and I fly there, and it sounds glamorous, but the truth is, trying to manage yourself through all those different time zones is really exhausting." And so the issue was, on the one hand, these are women who love what they do. It's just too much. Right. And so I'm sitting there thinking, I have a suggestion, right? I have a suggestion. I think we should all take some mindful time. I think we should all start meditating in the mornings. I think this would really help. Except at the same time, I'm realizing these women don't have time. And so when I did my meditation, when I started 14 years ago, I sat for 5, in fact, it was just 2 minutes, and that felt like forever. I got to the point where, I was dedicating half an hour in the morning, every morning, and half an hour every evening. But I recognized that most people, especially if you're starting out, you either don't have the time or you wouldn't even almost know what to do with yourself in 30 minutes of sitting in stillness. What do you think about anyway? And so that's where the 5 minutes came from. If you can just take back 5 minutes of time for yourself, especially in the morning, to just center yourself, then what my hope is that you will then start from a place of peace, and the things that happen over the course of the day are not going to be as emotionally draining and frightening and traumatizing, and you're better able to weather those things. And if you can give yourself a reminder throughout certain periods of day, especially over, let's say, lunchtime, if you could just take 5 minutes to just take time to breathe and just to be, and just to sort of disconnect from what's happening around you and reconnect with yourself, it would start to make a difference. So that's where the 5 minutes began. Just start small, because progress is progress no matter how small. So if you can just get into the habit of just taking five little minutes, then hopefully you'll start to see the difference, and hopefully you'll get more comfortable with spending more time by yourself, because you will see the benefits.
That's a really powerful message. I love that. And I also love how you mentioned your sisterhood circle. That's something I actually want to touch on. There's two things here that I'd like to ask you about the power of community, of having support around you. But also, I want to talk a little bit about the pressure that we are feeling more and more in our careers, and particularly that we're starting to notice through this interview series, women who are progressing to, as you were saying, the top of their game in their careers, and the expectation versus the reality when it comes to feeling alone as you rise to the top. One of the common stories that we've discovered is that as you begin to rise to the top, you find that you don't actually have people around you who you can talk to, and that can be a really big contributor to feeling burned out. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you've noticed?
Oh, yes. I remember the very first time I encountered that. It was early in my career, and I happened to be sitting at lunch with a gentleman who had recently been promoted, and he was a director of something, I forget what it was, and now he was a vice president of the something. And I was sitting next to him, and I said, wow, congratulations, how does it feel, right? And I'm expecting him to be like, I have the power. I was just delighted for him. He was, it was well-deserved, hardworking guy, had been known throughout the company. And the thing that stuck with me was his response was exactly what you're saying, Lucy. He said, first of all, I am no smarter today than I was yesterday when I was a director. And yet, now people look at me like I have all the answers, and I do not. And not only that, but all these people who were his peers yesterday suddenly are now his subordinates. He can no longer just walk into somebody's office and say, oh, I'm having such a bad day, because he's the boss, right? And he was coming into the recognition of just how much his life and his world had changed from one title to the next. And in this new world that he lived in, where he was expected to have all the answers and didn't, and he was expected to be like this self-contained powerhouse of knowledge and self-assurance, he didn't have that. And so he was really struggling with, who do I turn to? Because I can't go to the people I used to talk to anymore. And by the way, those people couldn't really give me what I need, because now they don't understand what I'm experiencing and what I'm going through. And so what do I do now? And so, I'm sitting there, I'm just the lawyer, right? So I'm not the counselor, I'm not the professional coach. And so I'm listening to all of this and I'm thinking, well, this is kind of a lot, and certainly more than I expected to hear, but here I sit. And so what do I say?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know about meditation, I didn't know about mindfulness, and so I sort of tried to give him some pointers. Well, you're not the only vice president, and what about your peers? And so I think that we all need community. And I think it is the reason why what you find is that at the top of organizations, for the CEOs, for the senior vice presidents, there is this creature called the professional coach. And the reason, and some companies will assign you a professional coach when you step into a certain role. And I think all of that is a recognition that we all need support. And we still need community, and we still need a place, a soft place to fall where we can just go and say, oh, this job is killing me. What do I do? What do I turn? How do you do this? And so I think that for most of us, if you look around your environment, you can create your own community, as we did in our sister circle, or you can find other organizations. Sheryl Sandberg started the Lean In circles, and really, and there are lots of different kinds of groups like that. There's some like Vistage for business owners and business leaders to just get together and talk about what's happening with your business. So there have sprouted these different organizations that are created for the specific purpose of providing support. And you can also just create your own. So personally, I feel like I have been so blessed because not only do I have my sister circle, I also have another group called My Sister's Keeper, and it's a different group of women that are local here. And we have a text group, and we text message everything from, hey, Oprah's coming to town, let's go see her, to this is the kind of week I've had, and what's happening with everybody else. So I think it's important to find something with like-minded people for every single one of us, because there's so much help and support when you realize that whatever you're going through, you're not going through it by yourself, and somebody else has been through it, and somebody else can probably advise you on one level or another for what to do.
That's beautiful.
That's so great. We have been talking, Lucy and I, about the importance of community and supporting one another, and even if just to provide resources or to provide a space. As you were saying, it must be challenging for people in top positions in corporate to have that space to share their vulnerability, because as you said, he couldn't express, the guy that had been promoted, he couldn't express what that was meaning to his to previous peers who are now the subordinates. And I find that do you find that there is more space these days, or there's becoming more of a space for people to be vulnerable in corporate, or is it more about finding that space outside of the job?
I think both.
Okay.
Because now what you notice, if you look across, especially large corporations, what you notice is that more and more of them, and many of them, have wellness programs, which, even, let's say 30 years ago was not a thing, right? And some of it started out of, maybe selfish motivations, right? So I spent 6 years in a financial services company, and we sold, among other things, group health insurance. And what we very quickly figured out was that prevention is better than cure. And so part of the reason for our wellness program, and I think part of the reason a lot of companies have wellness programs, is because they understand that keeping you well as a well-rounded individual is much cheaper than making you well on the back end, right? So we have wellness programs, and in a lot of those wellness programs, you're seeing mindfulness kind of coaching and meditative practices. I think it's a lot more acceptable today, and it's a lot more a part of the mainstream conversation today than it was even, a decade ago, because, the stigma of, mindfulness and wellness, this is weird Eastern foo-foo stuff, woo-woo, we don't understand, and what are you trying to do, float away, that is not there anymore in the way that it used to be. And I think we are all recognizing that actually human beings are human beings the world over. And we all struggle with the same thing. And I think in some ways the truth is the same the world over. And how you find space to be yourself is something that doesn't really change that much from one culture to another. But I do think now you only need to hop on the internet and look for, any topic, mindful leadership. What does it look like to be a mindful leader? And gone are the days where you're expected to just power through things, and you're expected to be an aggressive, sort of the old style male world leader. And now all of a sudden you're seeing words like empathy and emotional intelligence attached to leadership, and you're hearing CEOs who are interviewed and they're talking about what it looks like to be an empathetic leader. So I think now is a time for those of us who get to live in this environment when it is the most friendly for these kinds of conversations.
I love that. I love that. I love how you say that it's the most friendly for these kind of conversations. That feels really good to hear you say that. So I'm interested in if somebody in our community, for example, is experiencing a period of burnout, and from your experience, your story is extraordinary of what you've been through, some pretty intense knocks. So if somebody hasn't experienced mindfulness and they don't meditate, but they're in this place, they're in this position where they feel like they're burnt out and they're not having a particularly good time at the minute, what would be the first step that you would encourage them to take?
Well, I think the first step is, let's just first recognize and acknowledge what's happening to you, right? And I say that because you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. And historically, I think in many professions, we are told to just power through it, right? Don't be a sissy, just get on with the job, and you'll be fine. And maybe we don't really care if you're fine. We just care if you get on with the job and get it done. And
right.
So I think the very first thing you have to do is just stop long enough to recognize that something is happening to you and within you that is maybe giving you some warning bells. And so I'm not a medical doctor, so I did, for purposes of this conversation, just do some research. What does the Mayo Clinic say, is symptomatic of burnout? What do other doctors, what do medical professionals say? And burnout, while it is not a medical diagnosis, there are some sort of symptoms that you can start to tick off, and it's not any one thing, but for example, if you're listening to this and if some of these things start to sound familiar, let's say that you feel cynical and disinterested and engaged in, what's happening at home and what's happening at work. Let's suppose that you feel disillusioned with your job, with your life, with your family situation. Let's suppose you feel tired all the time. I mean, it's one thing to be tired and know you're tired because you went to bed too late last night.
Right.
Another thing, to feel tired chronically, even though you're getting, you're sleeping 10 hours a day and you're still exhausted. that might be an indication. Let's suppose that you find that on most days you are feeling sad and depressed, right? We all have bad days, but when every day begins to feel like a bad day, this might be an indication. When you have a hard time concentrating, you have a hard time starting and finishing, one thing. Now, in fairness, most of us do anyway. But like I said,
True.
there is a tipping point where these things come together. Maybe your sleeping habits have changed. You're having trouble sleeping. You can't stop your racing mind because you're stressed. You're stressed about work when you're at home. You're stressed about home when you're at work, and you don't feel like you're getting anything right. And you just don't care. You just don't care anymore. And you just really want to just chuck it all. Or maybe you're even being tempted to self-medicate with either food or drugs or alcohol. All of these things can point to a situation where you need to now take stock. I believe, this is my personal opinion, that the human body is the most powerful and most sophisticated computer on the planet. And it has these built-in safeguards where it will tell you when something is wrong, right? So, fear exists so that we look at something and we think, oh, something bad's about to happen. I need to take action. Pain is a way of saying to you, there's something in your body, there's something in your mind, there's something that is going on inside of you that needs attention. And I think burnout is just the same. So if you're feeling those things, then this is your body and your mind's way of saying something's wrong. So the very first thing to do, I think, is just accept that something's wrong. And, mindful is about recognizing what's going on within and around you without judgment. So a big part of that is to be able to say something's wrong and don't judge yourself for it. Something's wrong. It doesn't mean I'm weak. It doesn't mean I'm a sissy. It doesn't mean I'm a bad mom, a bad parent, I'm a bad employee. It just means something's wrong.
That's so great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a great reminder that it's the judgment piece. I feel like people or humans are so quick to judge themselves first and not allow just that space for, okay, something's wrong. What's the awareness? What's going on, and allow it to be for a moment. And that's a really great reminder. Would you be willing to maybe show us or guide us through a mindful in 5, or what that looks like to have a mindful moment? A couple of minutes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yay.
And I'll start with my experience, which I think is the experience of a lot of people.
Okay.
I was introduced to meditation by a friend of mine who said, just go home and sit down and set your timer for, let's just say 2 minutes. Just sit down for 2 minutes. And in that time, I want you to just think of a chant. And, he practiced God-centered meditation. So he said, well, just think of something simple, like, I love you, Lord. And just try that for 2 minutes. So I go home, and so if you've ever watched the movie Eat, Pray, Love, I had that experience where it's like, okay, so where am I going to sit? And how do I sit? Do I sit in a chair? Do I sit on the floor? Do I try and cross my legs? Oh, that hurts. Okay. What am I going to do? So I go through all of these shenanigans to try and just figure out just the how-to. And I finally settled for sitting down in the chair because that feels like the least distracting physically. And I sit there, I set my timer for 2 minutes, and there I go. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. Wait, I have to go grocery shopping. Now let me see. I'm supposed to be meditating. Right. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. Now, where did I put my wallet? So we go through this. And after a while, I think, I feel like maybe I didn't set that timer, because it's been like an hour and I've been sitting here trying to do this thing, and it's really hard. And gosh, I'm waiting and I'm waiting for that 2 minutes to be over. So now we've gone from I love you, Lord, to I'm waiting.
Yeah.
And when is the alarm going to go off to my clock is broken? I look at the clock and it's been 30 seconds.
Wow. Love it.
So this is why 5 minutes. So here's what I'm going to tell you. And in Mindful in 5, both, the first thing you get in the introductory email is just the how. How do you do this?
Brilliant.
And so we're gonna practically go through just a short session just to give you a sense for how to start. But before we do, let me tell you what I would like you to do is, if you want to go home and take some time and kick off your mindfulness practice, find a place that's quiet. Find a place that you can go to and not be troubled. It doesn't have to be a big space. It can be, as small as a closet. It can be the space underneath the stairs in your house. It can be just someplace quiet that you can be unmolested by the pets and the kids and the spouse and the roommate, and someplace that you can go to first thing in the morning. And so what you do is you get there and you're going to do one of two things. You're going to find a comfortable way to sit. So the easiest way for me to describe it is you want to sit in an ergonomically correct position. So if you're sitting in a chair, you want to sit in a chair where your body is at right angles, right? So my torso is at right angles to my thighs, which are at right angles to my calves, which are at right angles to my feet. Yes, I see Morgan adjusting herself. Yeah. Let us sit in an ergonomically correct position. Your body should be relaxed, and the one area of tension should be in your spine because you want to sit up. And when you sit up and when you're in an ergonomically correct position, it means that you're not having, sort of quirky, strange aches and pains, and you're not slouching over. And so it also allows the emotional energy to channel up and down, unfettered and unmolested. And if you opt to, you can sit cross-legged. Personally, I use a meditation pillow, which is just a pillow that elevates your bottom, and it forces your spine to be straighter. And it's easier on my knees because, now that I'm getting older, the body, the knees are less forgiving than they used to. So the whole cross-legged thing, it's sexy and it's exciting and it's wonderful, but it's not for everybody. And so when you sit, we're all sitting in our chairs right now. So what I want you to do with your hands is put them in your lap and just line them up one on top of each thigh with your palms up. Now, some people like to touch their fingers together. I've never personally found that to be especially useful. If that's your thing, do that. But the goal is to have your body in a neutral position. Palms up generally is an indication of receptiveness. And so this is our comfortable ergonomic position. So we've sort of overcome the first hurdle of where do I do it and how do I do it. And now we're just going to, and this will be a bit, maybe strange for everybody who's watching, but we're actually going to close our eyes. And so I'm going to close my eyes, and anybody peeping, you're going to see 3 people with their eyes closed. So just close your eyes and just focus on breathing. So for the next few moments, I just want you to inhale and exhale and just take a deep breath in now and exhale. Take another deep breath in and exhale. And so now you ought to be feeling a little bit calmer. Some of that tension should be leaving your body. Sometimes when you inhale and exhale, think about visualizing what is coming in and what is going out with your breath. So I inhale peace, deep breath in. I exhale tension, exhale. And now for the next couple of moments, just breathe and take stock of how your body is feeling. Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you comfortable? Are there aches and pains that you need to set aside just so you can focus? So for the next moment or two, just take stock of what's happening within your body right now. And I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to keep our eyes closed. And I just want you to go within and do that body scan. And now you can do the same thing with your emotions. How are you feeling? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you fearful of something that's coming this day? And so now we're going to take just a few moments to think about how you're feeling. And now let's give some thought to what are your intentions for this day. If you have a difficult day ahead, the rest of this day is looking kind of frightening. Think about how you can center yourself. I am okay right now. I am enough right now. I have everything that I need within me to overcome the challenges of this day. I am confident in my skills and my abilities. I am divinely blessed and infinitely capable. I can do all things that come before me this day. No matter how hard, no matter how difficult my coworkers, no matter how challenging, I can get through this day with poise and self-confidence. And so now you would take a few moments just to think about those things and just meditate on the skills and the abilities that you have within you that you're going to bring forth this day to meet whatever the challenges are. And now we're going to open our eyes gently and come back to the present. But that is the kind of thing that you're thinking about when you're doing your meditation. And what you realize actually is that if you really sit down and do it, 5 minutes will go by in the blink of an eye, right? And so what Mindful in 5 does is it gives readers what to think about while you're sitting there, because if you're just starting out, it's hard to sit there and think, so here I sit, what am I going to be thinking about? What am I, and the book is organized in such a way that it addresses every season of life. So, and I couldn't do weather because of course the three of us are in 3 different climates. So, if you say summer to a Minnesotan, we're like, woohoo! But if you say summer to somebody who lives in Dubai, maybe not so much. So, and we have fall, and the English have autumn, and so it's hard to do that. So what I did was I did it by times of day. So there is dawn, day, dusk, and dark, because we all have that. And we all have those seasons in our lives. So if you're going through a dark season, what do you think about, and how do you process that, and how do you think about the people that might have hurt you or betrayed you, because this is maybe part of your dark season. And so in the meantime, the emails give you on a weekly basis, here's the theme of the week, and here's what you think about when you're sitting there in your meditation. And of course, my hope is that you graduate from needing Mindful in 5 as the tool that you use, because you have now gotten your training wheels off and you're off and running, and you have your own meditation topics that speak to you from day to day. But that's the goal.
Wow.
Awesome.
That was really powerful. Thank you so much for leading us through that exercise. I felt immensely calm. And completely present, which I think was beautiful. And I loved, one of the things I really loved was the gentle, simple focus, first of all on the body, and then on allowing ourselves to focus on the emotions. Because that's sometimes, I think, something that we gloss over, is we don't give ourselves the opportunity to really check in. with that. So thank you. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Well, and it's so important, right? Because emotions historically have been decried in the workplace. We're not supposed to be, I think only in recent years have we recognized the value of bringing your whole self to work. And yet it is our emotions that are at work that define how we react to one another in the workplace. And you know how crazy it is that some of us don't feel like we are free enough to acknowledge those emotions. You can't have a knockdown, drag out fight with your partner at home in the morning and then come and do an outstanding job, right? We've all had that happen where you come into work and you just look at someone and they're kind of ugly today and they're saying horrible things to other people and they're snapping and and what you realize if you're really paying attention is this is not about me.
Yes.
This is about you and something that's happening in your world, in your life that happened. Maybe it's something that's happened at home. Maybe you've got a sick person at home. But, you know, we have to give ourselves permission to acknowledge that this is where I am and this is what I feel. Because only then can I then say, I am in the work environment now. How am I going to channel my energy? How am I going to control the one thing that I have control over, which is me, my attitudes, my reactions, and how I respond to the things that happen.
Beautiful.
So great. Thank you. And we will, for our listeners, we will put a link to Spiwe's sign up so that you can receive the Mindful in 5 and start on your mindfulness practice. Oh, great. Okay. So the one question that we ask all of our guests to close the show or the interview would be if you could send a supportive, loving message to your younger self from 20 or so years ago, what would you say?
I would say 3 things. Number 1, you are enough. So for whatever challenges that are coming, you are enough. You have enough within you to address and overcome every single one of them. That's thing 1. Thing 2 that I would say is start meditating now.
Yeah.
Because it is going to keep you centered when you run into the difficulties. And in fact, the truth is, had I started meditating when I was, when I graduated from law school, I think I was 22, things that turned out to be mountains and valleys would have just been blips on the screen. Doesn't mean it's going to make life easy, but it will make it easier for you to get through those things. And probably the third thing I would say is, along with meditation, is practice mindfulness, right? Because meditation, what we just did was mindful meditation. Meditation is often, sitting down, closing your eyes, using tools and techniques, mostly, lots of stuff around breathing. But mindfulness is just, as we're sitting here talking to each other, just being present in this moment. In this moment, I am sitting with Lucy and Morgan, and we are having this conversation with all of the viewers, and I'm not thinking about what am I going to do next at work. I'm not worried about what's happening with my dogs at home. I am fully here. And being mindful really is just about being present right now, because so many of us spend our lives looking in the rear view mirror, worrying and trying to change things we can't change, or we spend our lives worrying about what's happening in the future that we cannot control tomorrow. We can only plan for today. And so those are the 3 things. Number 1, you are enough. Number 2, start meditating. And number 3, start practicing mindfulness.
Amazing. Really powerful message. Thank you. Thank you, Spiwe. And just your presence with us today is such a gift. So thank you so much for sharing this space with us and your insights and your wisdom and your story. It's been such a delight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I feel blessed and highly favored to have been selected to do this with you. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaste.